Hello and welcome back to the United Devils podcast. Today we're going to be discussing United's back-to-back wins at Old Trafford with a 1-0 win against West Brom and a 4-1 win against Basaksehir before looking at the next two matches against Southampton away and PSG at home. With me today, I welcome back Joe and Arian. And let's go straight into the Premier League match. We're going into this game, obviously, straight after the international break, and lots of players have been away and only come back midweek. And so we were expecting a slightly difficult game, especially with the way we know West Brom play, especially at Old Trafford. So, Joe, let's just talk about, firstly, the lineup that we saw. I mean, there were a few raised eyebrows at what Ollie has selected. Pretty much all season, that's been the same thing. So what was your take when you saw the lineup?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really surprised, obviously, with the lineup because, like you said, in terms of selection and in terms of performance this season, we've been kind of consistently inconsistent, haven't we? In the way, and you turn up to every game and you're not quite sure what you're going to get. I think the team we put out in midweek, which we maybe talk about later, is the sort of team that I think every United fan would like to see more often, and that's the team. But the problem is with the defence that we've got currently this season and the way that we're set up, we cannot afford to be that attacking against most sides. So, but against West Brom, I think the only thing I would say is that I was hoping that we might have tried to be a little bit more attacking in the setup, but as it turned out, it's probably a good decision because you look at the way the game played out. West Brom were dangerous when they came forward at times, on the odd occasion, and they were getting at us still. So I think if we'd have probably played one more attacking midfielder than what we did, it could have been more problematic for us.
No, very, very true. I mean, it's always that fine balance which we've been struggling with a few times. But I think let's discredit the first few games. But since the Newcastle game, obviously we played McTominay and Fred in a midfield two pivot, and that did work a treat in the end. The Chelsea game overcorrected and we struggled to create initially. The Arsenal game, we played a diamond and it didn't quite work. So, I mean, this was obviously another challenge, and obviously we did come away with the 3 points with a Bruno penalty. But Aaron, it could have gone the other way round. Obviously, early in the second half, West Brom were awarded a penalty. Then I believe they hit the crossbar, and then we went up the other end and got ourselves one. So let's talk about both penalties. The first one for West Brom. Were you nervous when the referee went to go and check it that he wouldn't overrule it?
I mean, I was definitely nervous because the way that Bruno came in and kind of hacked the ball out from behind, it's like you never want to see those tackles, especially in the box, because you feel like if it's given anywhere, if it happens anywhere else on the pitch, it's probably going to be given as a free kick, even if there's the slightest of touches. But I did think that it was a little bit too soft, like a little too much touch and go to just give that penalty, especially at 0-0 in the second half. I thought it was the right decision in the end, but once they give it, though, they definitely do hesitate to overrule, and especially when they have somebody in their ear who is like not on the pitch, it's definitely tricky. But I do feel that it's good that they're using the screens more, and I think we've seen more often than not they do end up getting the decisions right when they do have a look and see, oh, maybe I did call this one too soon, or maybe I should have called that one. So it was definitely good to see. And then when it comes to the United one, I do think that it was like that handball rule is soft because in that kind of movement that the defender was making, trying to spread his body and block the cross, you don't really have anywhere else to put your hands unless he puts his hands behind his back, which I feel like is just instinct to kind of put them right here when he was doing that motion. But I do also see the point of the referee that he did make his body bigger, like the volume of his body increased significantly to block that cross that was going into a dangerous area, into that corridor of uncertainty. So I wasn't actually really thinking that decision, like if he didn't give it, he could have defended himself, and he gave it, and I think he could have very well defended himself too. And I think it was definitely much less questionable than that one that we got against PSG in the Champions League last year, when that Dalot shot was hit Kimpembe, and it was going over whether Kimpembe's hand was there or not. So I think this one was definitely far less questionable, and I think it just goes to show the fine margins in the Premier League. Like, you can play the worst team in Europe, and if you don't take your chances, every team is going to be in there till the end with a chance to upset you. So I think in the end, when we look at it at the end of the season, that was a very valuable victory and a clean sheet as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy in the referee that was actually managing the game, David Coote. He had obviously had the controversial moment in the Merseyside derby and then he was taken off the Liverpool-Leicester game that was happening, I think, the day after, and instead was on this game. And again, controversy swirling around, mostly due to rival jealousy, because the fact that David Coote in his profile pictures and stuff has him at Old Trafford. He's obviously a Manchester United fan. Joe, is there anything to read by this, or is that just nonsense that's been concocted just for the sake of it?
It takes me back to the Howard Webb days. Do you remember Howard Webb? Yeah, everyone thought Howard Webb was obviously a United fan. He kept getting the United-Liverpool games, didn't he? And everyone thought, actually, hang on, what's going on here? People used to superimpose pictures of him in a United shirt, didn't they? I mean, I can tell you with Howard Webb for a fact that he is actually a Rotherham United supporter, a team in the Championship, because they're my hometown club, and I've been to see him a few times, and I've met Howard Webb outside Rotherham. He goes to every home game. So trust me, he's a Rotherham United fan. I don't know whether he's got a soft spot for United as well. I'm not sure. But, yeah, no, look, you hope at the Premier League with professional referees that whoever they support, there's an integrity there, that there's a professionalism that it doesn't come into it. But I do think with David Coote, he could be one of these referees that just randomly halfway through the season may just disappear off the roster, if you know what I mean. I mean, like you said, he's had the game at Everton with the Van Dijk incident, didn't he? Where I think he should have obviously probably, dealt with that a lot better, even though I'm not bothered because it's Liverpool, to be honest. And then, yeah, I mean, just the way it went with the United penalty, it all did look like as if he was looking for something to overturn it, because just to talk about the penalty for West Brom again, the biggest surprise for me was not so much that he overruled it, was more the fact that even VAR told him to have a look at the screen, because I think VAR, if I'm being honest and taking my Man United hat off for a minute, VAR should have looked at that and thought, look, we can see why he's given that. You can see why he's giving it. We're not gonna get him to go over to monitor. It's not a blatant mistake, if you know what I mean. I can understand why he's doing it, but once they got him to go over, like probably 99% of the referees this season, once they go and look at the monitor, you know what's coming. They're going to change their mind, aren't they? Because I think in the back of their mind, they're thinking, well, I've obviously been asked to go over for a reason. We can't hear the communication, but I would imagine the VAR referees saying, look, this is what I can see. And he's like, when he looks at it again, or when you look at something 20 times, you can see whatever you want to see, can't you? So I think that was the biggest. Look, whether it's a penalty or not, I'm not sure. I think he definitely gets the ball. And it was interesting on the TV that the commentators who were doing the game didn't want to talk about the fact whether Bruno got the ball. They were more interested whether there was contact with the shin or not. But actually, the touch with the ball comes before the contact with the shin. So it's a tricky one. And then on United's penalty, I mean, yeah, like Aaron said, that new rule this season, it's soft. I mean, it was even softer if you remember in the early weeks of the Premier League. It was worse. At least they've sort of calmed down a little bit, but it's still quite soft. But again, the question mark with that one was not so much the penalty. Was there a foul in the build-up? That looked like there was a pretty obvious foul by Fred in the build-up. But again, is that the right phase of play? Nobody really understands anymore the rules, and you wonder how much the referees understand the rules too.
I mean, they're only human as well. You've got to admit they are going to make mistakes, and that's the whole point of VAR is to improve that. But then the thing is that that's made by another person. So that's what I've always found odd, is that you shouldn't have VAR up in the little box saying this is what you need to check. They should just have the referee on the pitch saying, I'm going to make the decisions. Oh, is there going to be something that I've made wrong? I need to just make sure that I've got this right. Quickly have a look at the monitor, see if I've made the wrong decision or the right decision, and then go from there. Not somebody talking to them saying, you need to have a look at something because I think you might have got this wrong. Because then there's obviously that peer pressure that I think there's very few referees in Europe in the top flight that would honestly go to the monitor and then keep the same decision, because it's very, like you said, how many times does it happen that they've said, there's an error and they've disagreed with another referee? So there's still lots of room for improvement. And the thing is that that's not going to take a short amount of time or as much as you would have expected. But it's what it is. And United got the 3 points they're one win away from 6th place, and with the game in hand as well against Southampton, that's a factor too, because they'll be level on points with a win at St Mary's. So we'll get onto that in a bit, but we'll go on to the Champions League. Obviously, United made things very difficult for themselves in match day 3 with the defeat in Turkey. So this was a real point to prove for all the players involved and for the manager himself, because PSG playing Leipzig was obviously a massive game too, and PSG won 1-0, and that would make things a lot easier, and United could go top of the group with 9 points. So again, like you said, Joe, the team was fantastic. We saw everything we wanted to see in a United side. Honestly, that first half reminded me of the Roma 7-1, or was it 6-1? It's just the flurry of goals. Yeah. But Arian, I mean, like what Joe said, the defensive culpabilities at times were worrying. So, I mean, how do you see that team playing? Like, what kind of teams would you see it playing against?
I mean, first of all, I wanted to address the team selection, because I feel like we played, in terms of the system and how attacking it was the same as it was in the first game against Istanbul. It was just one defensive midfielder. It was pretty much most of the focus on the attack, and we saw how that ended against Istanbul in the first leg, where it was just they were getting killed in midfield because there was nobody there to track back. And to make things worse, Matic was the only one defensive midfielder, and with his legs kind of spent now, he's not really great at doing the chasing. So I can see why Solskjaer feels more comfortable having 2 hard-working defensive midfielders in there for especially the big games where a midfield is really good and can cause United problems, is because when that United defense is left by itself, they do seem that they're still a little bit shaky, especially in the central areas. If they can get crosses in, Maguire and Lindelof, they have been solid since that Tottenham game, but they have shown their frailties at times as well when it comes to communication and who steps out, who stays behind. So I definitely do see that why he would want to play that double pivot with 2 defensive midfielders. But now going on to this Istanbul game, I thought that that's how they would play, just irregardless of the team selection, how they would approach the game against West Brom as well, because it just looked, the intent and the commitment and just wanting to win that ball back was there from the first whistle. Whereas against West Brom, you kind of got that feeling like, oh, well, they're there, but they're not really there. They're kind of slow to everything. The passes were not crisp. And then against Istanbul, it was like a completely different team. And I do think that Van de Beek makes a difference there, because he is somebody that he rarely ever misplaces a pass, especially in tight spaces. And that's who you need to come out of a press. Even when a team doesn't press that much, when he has limited options, he can pick out small holes to feed that ball through into the likes of Bruno and then in this case of the Istanbul game, the quick winger. So I wouldn't mind seeing that team. Like, I would be my incentive would be to keep it unchanged, more or less, against Southampton and see what they can do. But I totally do agree with Joe's point on Van de Beek. I'm just not sure about his. I'm not even going to question his defensive work rate, because I'm sure he will work, but it's just his capabilities as a defensive midfielder in terms of running, throwing tackles, and having enough in him still to have that advanced mindset of where he gets the ball, he's trying to be progressive and keep going forward. So I don't know about that one, but it's definitely, if they apply themselves like they did in that Istanbul game, I do think that they can cause Southampton problems and win that ball back and have control of the game, which would then see us see the best of Van de Beek. But if United are trying to play on the back foot, let Southampton play since it's an away game and try to break, I'm not sure if he's the right choice for that one in a defensive kind of setup.
No, I totally agree. I think it's almost like trying to play 2 8s as both number 6s in it, not quite working out how we would have liked, which is one person sitting back, the other pressing and then swapping. It just sort of seemed like one would press and the other one would just sort of stay in a slightly advanced area, and then we get, if it got cut out, which I think it's fair to say Fred did lose the ball a fair bit against Basaksehir, then things did cause United problems, and especially Visca, who was, I think you can say, exceptional for Basaksehir. We'll talk about the Basaksehir attack in a bit, but firstly, I'll go on to Donny van de Beek in a bit, but appreciation for Bruno Fernandes's opening goal, Joe. I mean, Paul Scholes-esque.
Yeah, definitely. But I think the reason you see Bruno there is because we had Alex Tellers in the team, and he can be on corners now, and that frees Bruno up, because actually that is a real key position on the edge of the box. You know, we were so fortunate for years with likes of Paul Scholes who could take up that position, and even other players. But, you know, obviously Scholes was free out there because obviously Beckham used to take the corners all the time. And now, if I mean, we're obviously going to see Alex Tellers in the team for the next 2 or 3 weeks, you would imagine, maybe, because obviously Luke's going to be a while till he's back. So I think there could be more opportunities out there for Bruno. He seems to be alert to the danger. They're the type of goals that you enjoy scoring. If you look at a lot of his highlight reels from his time at Sporting, he scored a lot of goals like that, to be fair. He scored a hell of a lot of goals from outside the box. Some of them look better because the goalkeeper's positioning was a bit questionable, or maybe the defence over there was a bit questionable. But, he has that capability to strike the ball so sweetly, to be fair. And he made a good point after the game where he said, hadn't he, he's obviously had a great impact at the club, but one thing he probably could do more is score more goals like that, to be fair, because when he's picked out those positions for United, we've often seen him shoot from there, and he's been a bit wayward, or he's been unfortunate with hitting the crossbar or the post or the keeper saving it. He's definitely got the ability to shoot from range, and that's a really useful quality to have, because in a team like United where we struggle to create chances now and again, if you've got someone who's got the ability to shoot from 25, 30 yards, that can win you a goal like that, to be fair. And another day that could be a game that's 0-0, it's tight. You look at the Chelsea game, for example, earlier in the season when it was 0-0. It was a real tight game. If Bruno could have picked out a strike like that, that would have won the game. So it's nice to have someone in there that can do that. But his overall impact on the team, obviously, you can't question it. It's incredible what he's done, and he's a star, and long may it continue for us, really.
Absolutely. And I think he's only the 4th quickest player to reach 20 goals for Manchester United, if I'm not mistaken, behind, I think, the likes of Van Nistelrooy and Ibrahimovic. He's up with some great quality players. I can't remember. I think it was also Van Persie as well, and smashing them in. All 4 of them really have proven themselves for United for 2 short careers for Ibra and obviously Bruno, who's still there. But it's something that builds confidence, and he's become United's main man. We can. Obviously, we saw what happened when he came off. Things started to look a little bit more nervy. And the goal as well that they scored caused a little bit of controversy with the faults of who it was, because I think a lot of people put some fault to David De Gea because he did get a hand to it. But I think that's more to do with the fact that it looked worse because he tried to save it and it went over the line. I think if he'd left that and it went in, it's a fantastic strike. So... I mean, Aaron, where's your stance on that? Do you think De Gea should have saved it? Is it an error from him?
I wouldn't say that it's an error. Like, I do think that when a defender manages to place it like that over the wall into that corner, there is a high chance of it going in. But I just do think that with a keeper of like that class, you do expect him to maybe anticipate it a little bit more, that it might be going over where he has placed his wall. But I had no issues with it, though. Like, I feel like the first instance was, wow, what a save. But it did feel like it did cross the line a little bit. But it was definitely not a De Gea error for me. Like, it was an avoidable goal in a way that foul was kind of unnecessary in those areas. You'd rather see the likes of Fred maybe step off a little bit and just shadow instead of trying to throw in tackles. And I do think that Fred has a capability of doing that in and around the box. He can just jump in sometimes and give away free kicks like that. But I think it was just credit to the taker. It was a good shot, and he caught off De Gea off guard. And luckily for us, we were in a comfortable position then, even though they did hit the bar right afterwards. But we managed to get a hold of the game in the last 10 minutes and kind of settle it down a bit and get that last goal, which was needed, because even though Bruno came off, we still had Fred and Donny on the pitch, and I was expecting them to still keep control of that midfield. But it did look like they were trying to do too much at times. I think I even tweeted at some point that Fred, he's so good when he tries to keep things simple and he just wins the ball back and gives it off. But sometimes he tries those over-the-top passes or diagonal switches, and they're just not necessary at those moments where he picks them. And it can lead United into getting in trouble. So I do think that sometimes it's just best to keep it simple, especially when you're in game management mode. But in the end, it's a shame that they missed out on the clean sheet. But it was a pretty assured second half as well, all things considered.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get on to those 10 minutes, last 10 minutes in a bit. But I think what could be, I mean, I felt a little bit nervous at 3-1 just because of the way things have gone for United in the last 7 years, that it just felt like they could score another and then things would get nervy. And obviously bringing on Matic was the right decision. But, 20 minutes before, or however long it was before the goal, Two players came on that I think Mason Greenwood and Daniel James, who we were expecting to see as a more that were starters for 2 points in last season. Joe, I mean, do you think that they're the kind of players that are perfect for off the bench cameos? Really, in a squad that would be like a title-winning or title-challenging squad, would be those kind of players that of that caliber and who can offer that much to come off the bench, and that's what we were really lacking last season. Do you think that that's shown a bit of a turn in the way that we play now?
Yeah, I think you look with the players that we've signed over the last sort of 12 months or so, we've obviously strengthened the squad a little bit because, in all honesty, Dan James has struggled a little bit, but I'd probably rather see him come off the bench than Jesse Lingard, if I'm being honest right now. So, look, Dan James is ideal for coming off the bench because, he won't want that role. He'll want to start, obviously, especially as his career develops and he gets older. He's going to want to become a focal point of the team like every player does. But when you look at his attributes and what he brings to this team, he's an ideal player to have to come off the bench. His pace is frightening when, if he's coming in the last 20 minutes and your fullback on the opposition's tiring and the centre-backs are tiring, the last thing you want, no defender likes playing against pace anyway. I think you can ask every defender, that's their worst nightmare is pace. Theo Walcott's probably made a career out of having pace. If Theo Walcott wasn't quick, God knows where he'd be now. You know what I mean? So, obviously, he's managed to, get by with having lots of pace. And I think Dan James is the same. And, if you look at, really, if we're 1-2-0 up in a game, that's when you want to be bringing Dan James on. Counter-attack, he can be devastating. The only thing he's got to improve in his game from that point of view is his decision making, because sometimes he finds himself in fantastic positions on a counter attack and he just doesn't quite get that final ball right or that final finish or just the decision whether to pass or to shoot. It's just never quite there. Obviously his goal was a nice goal against Basaksehir, but to be fair, his mind was made up. The ball was beautiful for him. He came onto it nicely. He didn't have to break stride. The keeper comes out a little bit, so it's an easy decision for him. I think you worry more with Dan James when he's got time to think about what he's doing on the ball. Obviously, when he's got a defence in front of him, that's why for me you should never play when you're playing against teams with low blocks, because when he's got a whole team in front of him, he's got pace, but he hasn't really got a skill and a trick to really beat people yet. But again, he's still so young and he's got time to add that to his game. He's working with some great coaches, obviously with Wales as well. Obviously, we don't know what's happening with Ryan at the moment, but if Ryan keeps that job, who better for Dan James to learn from than someone like Ryan Giggs? So he's got plenty of time to prove himself. A lot of people were sort of keen to see him go in the summer, maybe on loan or transfer. He's one I think needed a bit more time, to be fair. I think it's harsh to make a judgment of him so quickly. He has been poor since they are sort of opening couple of months of the season, but he will have, as a young player, he'll have peaks and troughs in his career, and United will just have to be patient with him. But I do think there's a player in there, yeah.
Absolutely, and I mean, no one needed a goal more than Daniel James on Tuesday night, and he's one that is certainly gonna need a little bit more refining, like you said. And let's not forget, we said the same thing about Marcus Rashford at the end of the 2018-19 season, that he kept making bad decisions. And look at us, 18 months later, and he's making good decisions on and off the pitch, really.
People wanted Rashford gone as well. Let's not forget about it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I remember the Trashford phase for some people was just unnecessary. And who was it? There was a commentator, I think it was Peter Drury, who said at one point that Rashford has the technique and the style of Ronaldo, but he has the footballing brains of Benteke. And it was funny at the time, obviously, but right now he's obviously proves a lot of people wrong, and I hope Daniel James can do exactly that point. But moving on to something you said about players wanting to leave, that was actually the result of our poll earlier today, in a narrower result. It was who should leave the club. Obviously, in January, there's a few players that are on the fringes at the moment. Thinking about Sergio Romero, Phil Jones, who's still injured, Lingard, who's coming back from, I think he was quarantining, and the likes of Odi Nagalo, who's not featured since Cavani joined, and his loan expires in January, and the likes of Marcus Rojo, who is in training but not mentioned in the Champions League squad. Aaron, are these the few players that you could see leaving, or is there anyone else that you could see depart in January at the earliest?
I mean, when it comes to Rojo, I don't think he's been registered in any of the squads, so I don't think he can play at all.
No, I'm not sure. Yeah, no, I don't think so.
He's definitely not in the Champions League one. I'm not sure about the rules for the Premier League, if he can be a late addition if somebody's injured or something, but he definitely wasn't in the European squad. And when it comes to January, I think, you have those regular culprits that still need to be shipped out, and the suitors need to be found for the likes of Phil Jones, who obviously his days are numbered, even though he is injured. Like, there is no way he gets back in this team in any way, especially with the current setup at centre back, and with United actively rumored to be looking for somebody else to bring in next summer as well. The one thing that I'm very curious about is Dean Henderson, because United definitely had a plan for him, and I do think that he was brought in with the kind of, I don't want to say hope, but maybe an expectation that, maybe De Gea really is deteriorating, and that's it. He will make more blunders, and then you have an easy fit here, Dean. You start and prove yourself. But De Gea, as I think a lot of us expected, once he has top-class competition, somebody who isn't like Romero, who Romero loved that number 2 role. He loves United, and he was like, fine, I will back him up. Whereas Henderson came in here, and he's like, well, I'm United through and through. I want to play here right now. So I think that's made a huge difference for De Gea. We've seen him win some games this season for United. That Brighton game at the start of the season in the league, you could say that he won that by himself with the amount of saves, even though we did concede twice. So I am interested in how they handle the Henderson situation, because I don't know how many more loans he has in him at this point with England and with the Euros as well. Like, he's getting called up to the squad now, but I'm assuming that if he doesn't play too much between now and the Euros, he's not going to be in that squad, and nowhere near challenging Pickford, who seemingly is untouchable anyway. So he's like nowhere near being even in the conversation right now. It's Pickford and Nick Pope. So does he stay past January? How do United utilize him? I didn't see De Gea in the training pictures from today. I saw Henderson and Romero there, and Lee Grant. So I'm interested. Maybe they give him some games in the league, but then again, when you see how De Gea is playing, do you really rotate it right now and put in a Dean Henderson who's probably a little bit rusty, because he went from playing every single game to cup games now, a couple of cup games, and mostly being on the bench? So that's the interesting one for me. Does he agree to go maybe on the loan between that January and June, and then we'll see again in the summer? Does he maybe just demand the transfer? Because if De Gea is only 30, like, for a goalkeeper, he's got time still. Like, we think because he's been around for so long, he was near being finished. But if he rediscovers and keeps the form that he has now, there might be no getting rid of him for another 5 years, and that could be quite comfortable, to be honest. So that's the interesting one for me. Come January, what the Dean Henderson situation is, and how many games he gets in between this weekend and the transfer window.
Yeah, it is. It's obviously a very interesting situation there, because he's obviously come back and he's said in many interviews, I want to be Manchester United's number 1 goalkeeper. I want to play for this team. I want to start for this team. I want to compete with David De Gea. He knew there was going to be a lot of competition. He'd obviously signed the deal the season before for, I think, 3 or 4 years, and he knows the circumstances. So I think it'll be interesting to see. And I think after the PSG game, if things are wrapped up, which they could very well be, if Basaksehir beat Leipzig and United beat PSG, then they're top of the group undeniably, and no one can catch them. I could see Dean Henderson starting in Germany with nothing to play for, and certainly positions to interview for almost. But there's also the cup game against Everton. There's the FA Cup, which if we have a nice run, which I don't think we've had for a few years, which would be quite nice, and maybe Henderson can have his go there. I'm not sure I'd see him replace De Gea in the league. De Gea, obviously, I don't think he's missed a Premier League game since the final day of the 2017-18 season. I think he's played for the last 2 years, actually, which I think it says a lot about sort of how the hierarchy rolls there. And I think if he was to be dropped from a Premier League game, it would say more. I think it would, obviously, the whispers would be more about him than Henderson, really. So I don't think it's good for any of them if that happens. So it is going to be an interesting situation. Joe, where do you see Odion Ighalo going in January? Back to Shanghai?
Yeah, he'll go back to Shanghai, unless obviously someone feels that they can afford or could do with a player like to do what he's done for United. I mean, obviously he hasn't done much this season, but he had, he was quite handy to have around, obviously, when he first came, and someone might look at that and say, look, can we get him January till the summer just to do a job for us? I mean, the only thing I found strange is when United did extend that they extended it all the way to January, to be fair. That just sent a bit of a weird. I always thought in the summer, you get to the summer and then you reevaluate, you reassess, and you bring a striker in, which is what they did in Cavani. And then obviously once Cavani comes in, there's not going to be a place for Ighalo. I don't even think he gets in our League Cup team now, to be honest, which is, just the strength that we've got in that position. But, look, it is what it is with Ighalo. It'll just peter out. It's January is quite close now. He'll go back to Shanghai. I think he's going to earn a pretty penny over there, isn't he? Because he stayed with United on the understanding that he'd sign a new contract there, and I think earn about $400K a week. So he's going to be all right. Thank you to him. I think, like I say, when he came in, he was helpful for us, just to, if nothing else, just to give a few players a rest and whatever. And while he was there, he scored goals. He did get a couple of goals. So I think if the players in the squad as well, the younger players, they can learn a lot from him, because he's got some very clever movement. He's an experienced striker, so hopefully they've taken the opportunity in training to watch Ighalo, watch some of his movement, look how he scores those sort of poacher goals in the box. Because if we've got some great strikers at the club, but if there's one thing they don't really do, it's that score those instinctive number 9 poacher goals. And I think with the likes of Ighalo in the squad now and Cavani coming up, they're the type of players that will score those goals. And hopefully, even if they're not playing week in, week out, they'll show the rest of the boys in our team just how it's done.
Absolutely, yeah. And he obviously came up with some crucial goals. You have to say, Norwich being one, the couple in the FA Cup game against Derby, and in the Europa League against, I think, both Lask and Club Brugge, and a fantastic goal against Lask in that final game before lockdown. But we'll move on because we are slowly running out of time. But we'll go on to Southampton, and it's going to be a massive game because obviously United are 3 games unbeaten. It's been a while since we were 4 games unbeaten. I think you have to stretch it back to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's first few games as the manager, really, and it's going to be really difficult because United haven't beaten Southampton since that Andreas Pereira wonder goal in 2019. I think just days before the PSG match, and it's been tough to play against them under Hassan Hutel, who's got this well-drilled team, which was originally a back 5, or it might have been a 3-4-3. And now it's a 4-4-2, which is robust in defence and aggressive in attack with the marauding fullbacks. And they still managed to get everyone back behind the ball, so you can't counterattack them. Obviously had a fantastic game against Chelsea, where they were, I think, 3-1, or rather 3-2 down, well, 2-0 down, and then managed to make it a 3-3 draw. Obviously, they had a little bit of help from Kepa for that Che Adams goal. But mostly it was down to their work rate and their tireless running. Aaron, is this the game you're most nervous about since the international break?
Not really, to be honest. I think in terms of just a head-to-head matchup and how they play under Hassan Hutel, I think it's for United, it's probably one of those games where you go into and you think, well, we can play our game here. If we get control of the ball, that's perfect. But if we don't, I think they are susceptible to being attacked, and their defense isn't the best in the league by any stretch. So I do think that United can cause them a lot of problems, and going away to a ground where a team won't park 10 players behind the ball, I think that's ideal. And I think it's one of those games that United can thrive in. But the thing for me is just how we evade the press, because they will press like crazy, because that's just their style. And they play 2 quick forwards as well, and they start from the front. They don't really let you get comfortable. So you just have to be decisive and incisive playing against them. So that's one of the things that has me leaning towards keeping the midfield as was for the Istanbul game, because I do think that what was the last game that it was Arsenal, where we played two defensive midfielders and they just couldn't get out of their half with the ball on the ground. It was just impossible because neither Fred or McTominay could do it. McTominay is capable of it sometimes, but when he gets pressed really hard, no. And then Fred sometimes forgets that there is not a lot of time on the ball in the Premier League, and he gets dispossessed too. So that's where Donny van de Beek, I think, dropping in between the defenders and trying to bring the ball out could help a lot against the team who will definitely press and work really hard. So it's another one of those tests for United, how they come in here. They will probably be confident. They should be, because like you said, there was 3 wins in a row now in all competitions. So it's just about the mindset, I think, going into this one, and not underestimating Southampton. And they shouldn't, because they're ahead of us in the league. But it's just about the execution for me, trying to break out of the press and keeping the things that need to be kept simple, and trying to get their foothold in the game early and not let them get comfortable, because they are dangerous.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing I would say is that we've seen, like you said, Fred does take his time on the ball and he gets pressed quite a lot. It was something that actually led to the opener at Old Trafford earlier this year, with Pogba coming out with the ball, losing it out, and then Armstrong scored after, I mean, you have to say, a defensive panic, really. Joe, Arian said he'd like to keep the midfield the same. Would you agree with that stance? Would you say Matic is probably with the other only available midfielder, with McTominay and Pogba not fit? Do you think that he has to come in then?
The biggest problem for United this season is Matic's form. Because if they've got an on-form Nemanja Matic, they can get away with playing just Nemanja Matic as a DM. You saw, obviously, post-lockdown, just after he signed the contract, we were playing Pogba, Fernandes, Matic 3 in midfield, and it was fine. You know, let's be honest, Bruno Fernandes and Pogba, neither of them are known for their defensive sort of, what's the word? Can't trust them defensively, if you know what I mean. So defensive reliabilities. So, you know, that is the issue for United. If they had an on-form Nemanja Matic, they could get away with playing like a Van de Beek in the midfield alongside him. But the problem is Matic has just looked so off it, I think, at the start of this season again. I don't know whether it's because of lack of pre-season, whether obviously he's not had much of a break either. You know, he is one of those players that when he's out of form, he looks bang average, to be fair. When he's on form, he looks great. So I think if Matic was playing really well, I wouldn't have an issue putting Van de Beek next to him. The problem is when Fred's your only DM, it's not enough on his own, to be honest, to do that job effectively, I don't think. And this is why I think I was surprised last summer, and I'm surprised even now going into January, coming up to thinking about signings for next summer. United aren't massively linked with CDMs, and I think it's a key position for the balance of the team, to be honest. They need a hybrid between someone like Paul Pogba and a Nemanja Matic, you know, someone like a Dennis Zakaria at Borussia Mönchengladbach, or, you know, a Wilfred Ndidi or something like that. Someone who can, because at the moment United are having to play 2 CDMs, and they're even doing it in home games against the lesser teams in the Premier League. And I'm not being funny, when Mancini was manager at Man City, we used to laugh at him for putting Nigel de Jong and Gareth Barry in the midfield at home for their home game. You know, why do you have to play 2 DMs? And, you know, United are in the similar situation. So I think it's Matic's form is key. So if Matic comes in and you can guarantee he's going to play well, I'm happy with Matic and Van de Beek. But actually, if Matic plays at the moment, I think he's going to have Fred alongside him to help him through the game, because defensively, Van de Beek won't be held to help him. And nor should he have to, really. That's not his game. That's not what we bought him for. We didn't buy him to be a sort of anchor man or anything like that. We bought him to affect the game further up the pitch. I'd love to see us start every game, like I said, like the Istanbul team. I think that's exactly what we want to see, that many attacking players on the pitch. But you have to be sensible, and you have to look at the way Southampton play and the way they press. You know, United are going to have to get press-resistant players in the team. And there's no doubt Van de Beek is one of those players. Don't get me wrong, he is press-resistant. But when we're going the other way and when they're attacking, can he hold his position well enough, in order to support Fred and protect that back four? Which the issue with the back four is they don't engage early enough. So Harry Maguire and Lindelof are not players that engage with the attack. So they don't come out and press, they sit back, and then what happens is your attacking players are up the field, your defence is dropping deep, you've got oceans of space, and this is why teams are playing around us on the edge of our box, and that's why it's an issue. And the other thing with Southampton, if you give them space on the edge of the box, they've got players who are capable of scoring goals from out there. Ward-Prowse can score goals from distance. Che Adams has scored a couple of cracking goals. You know, they got Redmond, fullbacks. Yeah, they've got loads of players who are very good on the edge of the box. So United need to make sure that they're set up right and that they engage with Southampton further up the field. You've got to be brave in games like this, risk and reward.
Absolutely, and it's about getting past Southampton and almost making them fear to leave spaces out front, because then you can keep them penned back and see what magic. I mean, if it's Van der Beek and Bruno Fernandes and whatever attacking combination we come out with, there's going to be chances, and you would expect at least to take a few. Irene, you said you want to keep the midfield the same. Would you keep the front three the same with Rashford on the right, Cavani up front, or would you maybe have a look at Mason Greenwood or Mata?
I'd actually like to see it unchanged, to be honest, from the Istanbul game, because I really enjoyed the energy. Was the big thing for me, how they came out and really just put it on Istanbul straight away. And I think, like Joe said, in those kind of games, you have to go out straight away and try to unsettle your opponent and be proactive in a way, because United have looked the best this season when they press and they make teams go long. And then Maguire is very capable of winning things and recycling the ball, and United can just go again. Whereas if United let teams, especially teams that can't play football, play their football, that's when problems start arising. Because also, like Joe said, the defenders know they're not very quick. So they're obviously instructed as well as they don't want to step up higher and engage in trying to win the ball back. Because then if we get hit over the top, then it's even worse. So they do have to kind of be mindful of what they do, and especially against the Southampton, who have quick runners all over the pitch. It's only their two central defenders and two central midfielders who aren't blessed with crazy pace. Everyone else is runners, and they bring men forward as well. They remind me a lot of, and it's obviously Hasenhüttl used to work there, RB Leipzig in a way that they play. They do engage a lot of men forward. They press, and United show that they are resistant to playing against that. They minimized Leipzig to very few chances at Old Trafford, and they hit them on the break. And Southampton do similar things. They like to play high up as well, and their defenders have shown, especially the two centre halves, that they are susceptible to being caught out. So I do really like if United would start with that lineup that they did, and that front three of Rashford and Martial on the wings, getting that press up, and Cavani works like a horse too. He never stops running in spite of his age, and he did get that valuable 90 minutes in midweek, and I think that could be good, especially as well with Cavani in the middle. The runs that he makes, he stretches those defenses and gives space for the likes of Bruno. Like, without Cavani's movement, Bruno doesn't get either goal, because it was Cavani who kind of disrupted for the first one, and the second one he made the keeper question and the defender question where the ball was going and if he's going to get to it or not. So I would like to see that changed, and for them to just go out with the exact same mentality of just from the first whistle, try to win that ball back and control the game, because they are well capable of it with the midfielders that we have. And yeah, go from there. Definitely don't sit back and let them attack you and let them get shots off and get confidence coming into a game, because that always spells bad things for this United side.
Yeah, very true. I think the fact is that, I mean, I really love the positions Rashford was picking up on that right-hand side. It was like when Ronaldo would play on the right-hand side. He'd not want to do it, but he'd do it to be direct, and then he would cut in and play centrally, and then drift out to the left every now and then. And Martial can swap. And even Cavani was playing on the left wing for a bit, maybe for the goal kick, so he could get the ball back. But Joe, would you agree with that, or would you maybe think about someone else, or even revert to the Premier League front three as such?
No, I agree with that. I was like Aaron. I was really impressed with Cavani. Although he never scored in midweek, like Aaron said, his movement actually made some of the goals. And what I was most impressed with Cavani was just the way he showed maturity. And when the ball was played into his feet, he was making it stick, and he was moving it on to someone else and developing play. And for as good as those front three are at United, Rashford, Martial, Greenwood, they are exciting talents, all of them. They're not the best when they have to sort of back to goal, have to come and receive the ball. I feel too often they lose possession, or their pass can be off. But with Cavani, you saw he drop deep, he take the ball, he keep it simple, he move it in, and his movement. And the other thing with Cavani as well, with having Alex Telles in the team, it gives Alex Telles something to aim at when he's crossing from the left as well. Because with Cavani now, you've got someone who is seriously good with his head,
and he's always in the box.
Yeah, exactly. You've got someone who's going to be in and around that 6-yard box, and somebody who's wanting to put his head on the ball. That's the other thing with Martial, Greenwood, Rashford. You never really feel that they're 3 players there that want to head the ball. They can head the ball, and they've scored headed goals, but they're not. That's not what their game is. But with Cavani in the box there, and with the ability of Telles from the left there to put balls in the box, and even Wan-Bissaka, to be fair, now and again can deliver well from the right. He could score a few goals by just sitting in our penalty box this season. So I wouldn't be disappointed to see Cavani play again and the same front 3. But it's just whether he can as well. Obviously, can he play 2 games in 4 days? Obviously, he played 90 in midweek. Can he go again? There's only one way to find out. And, just going back to midfield quickly, we were talking about McTominay might not be fit this weekend. If he's not fit, then that might force Solskjaer's hand. He might have to go Van der Beek. If he doesn't feel he can trust Matic's form, then he'll have to go Van der Beek. But the one thing with Van der Beek is he progresses the ball forward, which is probably better than any of the other midfielders. So, his first thought is to look forward, where with Fred and Scott, even though they work well as a pair, as a double pivot, they're not all, their first option is not always forward. So with Southampton, I think you need to, like Aaron said, you need to be brave. You need to be looking to move that ball forward as quick as you can. Probably, if that is the case, with the exception of a prime Paul Pogba, Van der Beek's probably the best player we got to do that.
Yeah, it was honestly a pleasure to watch him on Tuesday. It was just fantastic seeing the simple things just done so nicely and clinically almost.
He's a Dutch player, and that's what they do. They just do the basics very, very well. They're like the All Blacks of football, aren't they? They just do the basics so well, and you appreciate it. And it's so simple, but it's effective.
It really, really is. We'll get on to predictions now. Arian, do you see United making it 4 out of 4?
Yeah, I hate predictions because I never get them right, and I thought we would batter West Brom. I thought West Brom would get turned over and we'd go into Istanbul, and then they played against Istanbul like I thought they would play against West Brom. So it's a difficult one, but I do see that this one could be one of those games that United just cut them up, because if they do come out brave and play football, United have plenty of quality, and more quality than Southampton on an individual player-by-player basis. United beats them in every position pretty much, especially right now and on form. So I do think that United have the capabilities, if they just play to their capabilities, that they turn them over here. And I don't want to be too cocky with the prediction, but I think everybody is confident and the team should be confident, but it's just about translating that confidence onto the pitch and not turning into the complacency that they do tend to do quite a lot. But I do think that this will be they have to start at some point clicking, and the away form has been good. I think the catch-up has started now. It feels like maybe now they've turned that corner and they're starting to catch up in the league. So I do think that they'll get a result here, and I'll go for a 3-1.
Excellent. Well, no clean sheet, unfortunately, in your prediction. But Joe, would you say clean sheet and a win?
No, I can't see United keeping a clean sheet, to be fair. I think Southampton are just too dangerous. I'd love it. I mean, it would be massive for the team, by the way. If they got a clean sheet at Southampton, I think it would be big for them, big for their confidence, because Southampton can score goals against anyone. Like you said, they went to Stamford Bridge earlier in the season and scored 3. I know Chelsea's defence then wasn't great. It's got better now, but still, that's no mean feat going to Chelsea and getting 3. They've scored goals against all sorts of teams, and they are capable. I think they will get 1, and I wouldn't be surprised if they get the first, but I think United have got a bit about them at the moment, and I'm going to be quietly optimistic and say maybe 2-1 or 3-1, something like that. I do think, the more I've listened to Aaron, he's probably convinced me I wasn't that confident about this game, but I think it reminds me a bit of Everton just before the international break. I was dreading that game as well, going to Everton just before the international break, but you look at the performance that United put in there out as a professional performance. You did wonder how we could beat an informed Everton team, but we did. So maybe that's the blueprint to go to Southampton, something similar like that, be solid and then get the ball forward quickly, high intensity, because that's definitely how we beat Everton. We were hungry for the ball. You felt that game they had a bit of a point to prove, because if you remember, Solskjaer's job looked like it was on the line at that point. But the players can't lose sight of that, because I think Solskjaer's job is on the line every game to game, because at United, you're only ever one game away from a crisis, aren't you? And I think we're only one game away from Ollie ridiculously being questioned again. So I think United, but United have to be up for it. They have to start well. They have to, they have to have the right attitude from the beginning, like Aaron said, because if you're not quite there mentally, physically, this is a team that will find you out. They'll smell blood. They did it at Old Trafford. United were tiring last season, if you remember, by the time Southampton came to Old Trafford. And Southampton knew that. They smelt blood, and they were all over us like a pack of sharks. So United don't... It's important, the impression that United give to Southampton here, and the impression is that we're bang up for it and we're ready.
Absolutely. I think you're right, and I think they have to get... I mean, I would say United have to get the first goal, because it could get... I think Southampton would then say, right, we've got one goal, let's sit back and counter them, because they struggle to break teams down historically. So, and another thing, like you said, I agree, Ollie's job is always on the line from game to game. It's, we're two dropped points away from being criticised. Hell, he was criticised for only getting a 1-0 win against West Brom, because apparently no one ever wins 1-0 and gets away with it, do they? No one ever wins titles with 1-0 wins. Not like in the last every single season in Premier League history. But, it's one of those things that people will have an agenda and stick to it. But you're right. You're absolutely right. If we drop points against Southampton, it's almost like, 2 steps gained, 1 step back. But with that game in hand as well, it always looks worse. And so I think they have to win. I think they have to score the first goal. And I'll go for a hectic 1-3-2. Because, I mean, historically, we do concede 2 goals at St Mary's. I think we've only kept 1 clean sheet in the last 6 matches there. So it's something like that. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it is a 3-2 or even a 4-2, because both teams have the capabilities to score. We'll move quickly on. PSG is obviously the game after. And honestly, it is a battle, because if United do win, they do qualify for the Champions League undeniably, and they could, with any points dropped by Leipzig, they could get top spots there and then. I think they are only one of 2 English teams not to qualify for the Champions League, with Liverpool's loss to Atalanta, meaning they have to wait till next week as well. Aaron, Thomas Tuchel said that he might sit back and play low block at Old Trafford, and counter with obviously brilliant players like Mbappe, Di Maria, Neymar. Obviously, more players are fit to play for PSG than was in the Parc des Princes. But I mean, do you think this is going to be an uphill battle, and do you think United should play how they did in Paris?
I mean, first of all, it's a tough stretch of games when it comes to rotation, because there isn't really that much room for it, because every game now matters a lot. And I think this one in the Champions League, if they beat PSG, I think regardless of the Leipzig result, they're going to clinch first place because of the goal difference. Like United's goal difference. Leipzig would have to batter United like 5-0 in that head-to-head in order to get over them in the goal difference. I think United's one is +5 or +8 at the moment. So so it's really comfortable. So it's a huge game in terms of, this is your last home game of the group stage. You beat PSG and you're pretty much set. Like, you can then go to Germany and not relax and lose, but there's more room for maneuver. So it's an interesting one in that, because we really need the 3 points against Southampton. There is no room for rotation. Then you go over from Sunday to Wednesday, and you need to go again with pretty much our strongest team. So I would expect United to set up similarly to that away game in PSG. I do think that, especially if we go out against Southampton with Van de Beek and Fred again, I would expect that midfield to get rotated for that game against PSG. Hopefully McTominay is back fit. Hopefully Pogba's back fit. And hopefully Matic will be ready to play there as well. So there are some options in that department. But I wouldn't expect a whole load of changes, to be honest, because, like I said, the game is big. In order to allow Solskjaer to have some rest in the future, you have to go in there and try to beat PSG. And especially if they sit behind the ball, like Tuchel said they might do, I'd say let them on, because I think that defense has shown every time we've played them that there's goals in there. They like to give away goals, and they're shaky, and they give United quite a lot of chances. And I do think that United's midfield without Verratti in PSG's midfield is better on paper than PSG's one. Like it's pretty ordinary. They have a Herrera there who's good, but he's not great. They have Gay in there who's good, but not great. And then they have another couple of players who are decent, and the Draxler who's pretty much out of favor. So I do think that if United approach it the way they did the first one, where they were very disciplined defensively, maybe even with a 5 at the back again, with the wing backs, which seemed to work quite well to neutralize Mbappe and Neymar. That game is there for the taking, and I watched extended highlights of their game against Leipzig, and they got played off the pitch. Other than that penalty that Neymar got there in the early stages, Leipzig had chance after chance, and PSG were really struggling. And like Tuchel, that's what made him allude to him setting up defensively at Old Trafford, because that's what it looked like. They were defending quite a lot with the best players on the pitch against Leipzig, and they still got outplayed. So I do think that United have that game there for the taking, and with the home form improving, I'm quietly confident again going into that one.
Yeah, and with respect to Basaksehir, they were even allowing them chances in Turkey before they got the 2 goals. I mean, Navas had to make some ridiculous saves at points. So, I mean, I agree. I think they continue to have defensive frailties, and honestly, when I saw that PSG were linked with Alex Telles after the Reguilon deal went through for Tottenham, I was worried because they need fullbacks, because their centre backs on paper are good. Marquinhos is obviously a quality player. Kimpembe's got good qualities that have obviously helped him with playing for France. But the fullbacks have always been suspect. I'm not sure about Florenzi. I don't know how or why they let Meunier leave, who was actually probably their most solid defender, or at least in the fullback position. But Bernat and Kurzawa are just not defensively solid at all, and summed it up when they were both linked with moves to Arsenal. So it's one of those things where I know United can get a win if they play them off the pitch like Leipzig did. But Joe, do you see United coming away with this many wins? Because it does always feel like when we get a good few games that there's a setback almost on the horizon.
Yeah, you're just nervous as a United fan, aren't you? Because you just think, like I've said before, the team's very sort of consistently inconsistent. So you go into every game with trepidation, thinking, "Is this the one?" And obviously, losing the way we did to Spurs earlier in the season, I think that's made everyone nervous. Now this team's shown that they're capable of imploding, they're capable of self-destructing against good teams, and they're not immune to a big result. But weirdly, I'm not too worried about the PSG game. So 4-0 PSG win incoming probably now. But no, I'm quite confident. I just feel like Solskjaer's got that game locked down. You know, he seems to have a bit of a blueprint in how to go about that. Obviously, the famous win he had there when he first took over last season's campaign, not last season's campaign, sorry, the season before. You know, and then obviously going there and doing the same again. You know, the way he set up with maybe 5 at the back, I think it was this season. I can't remember whether it was 5 at the back when we went there the first time around and won. I'm not. Was it 5 at the back? So he's obviously got a bit of a template and a blueprint for beating PSG. And I agree with Aaron. For all the great players they've got, they've seemed to have neglected the midfield a little bit. You know, I know they've had injuries there, but he's neither a midfielder nor a defender. You know, Idrissa Gueye was obviously at Everton, no disrespect, before he went to PSG. Ander Herrera, you know, obviously was at United, but for whatever reason, money or whatever, we decided he wasn't sort of invaluable, that we couldn't get rid of him. So they've got some decent players like there, don't get me wrong, but they rely so heavily on the likes of Neymar and Mbappe just to take over the show, that I think when teams go there and actually go pound for pound for them, or actually if they frustrate them and sit off them like we did, you know, and McTominay and Fred just get around the likes of Neymar and McTominay, they don't really have a plan B. Tuchel doesn't, because they don't have to worry about that. In the French league, you know, those players will get them through, but in the Champions League, you know, you have to be a little bit more tactically switched on, and sometimes when you're getting frustrated, how are you going to combat that? And United just seem to have a way of playing that does frustrate them, and so I think Solskjaer will have his team all ready for that one. He'll know what he's doing. Rotation, no rotation. As long as everyone's fit, he'll have a good idea in his mind, probably straight after the first game, what he wanted to do at Old Trafford. The only thing will be is whether he goes 5 at the back because they're at home, or whether he'll be braver and go 4. But I don't think it's necessarily negative to go 5 at the back. I mean, Chelsea won a league under Conte, playing 5 at the back week in, week out, home and away, and they still played attractive football at times and scored plenty of goals. So I wouldn't be afraid to use 5 at the back just because you're at home. I think if it works against a certain team, and actually a point might be enough for them to qualify. So, yeah, you know what I mean? Do what you have to get through at this stage, because United will have done really well to get through this group. Nobody, I think, would have thought we'd have been where we are right now. So I think that's a bonus, and I think we've done really well to get ourselves into this position. We should be qualified by now because we should not have lost in Turkey.
No.
The game at Old Trafford showed that we should have beat Istanbul in Turkey, but 2 sloppy goals that we give away, and that's the Champions League for you. But United have done really well in this group. We've just got to finish the job off now.
Absolutely. And you can't get bigger than PSG, obviously. The fact is that they've got 2 megastars who score 20 plus goals a season, get numerous awards for their efforts, and are obviously dangerous players. And the fact they neutralized both of them in one game in their own backyard it says a lot. One of the players that's not going to be available is s.2, who's banned for a game for 2 yellow cards in each of the Basaksehir matches. So that's a big loss, especially with Bailly not fully fit. I think he's still in training but not ready. Obviously, that would hamper chances of a back 5. But Aaron, how do you see that game going? Predictions? Would you say another win for Ollie against Paris?
I mean, yeah, it's hard to go into these games because it just feels like when we go into those big games, we have less kind of concerns about how the team will turn up and how they will play than we do when we're playing Norwich, West Brom, or all those kinds of teams. So I'm especially with them picking up wins now, it gets you quietly confident. And I do agree with what Joe said. It just looks like Solskjaer has a way of switching those players off and minimizing their danger, because before Martial's own goal, they never really looked that dangerous. Like De Gea only had 1 save from that very good Mbappe chance, and that was it really. That Martial own goal after a mistake that 9 out of 10 times he doesn't make, clearing the corner on the front post. That's it really. And then also just touching on what Joe said about the 5 at the back quickly, United set up like that in Paris, but they never really looked like we're playing defensive 5 at the back. They had control of the midfield, and Telles and Wan-Bissaka pushed up very well to help offensively and in ball retention in the midfield. So I do think that 5 at the back was just kind of helping you assure and shore up the defense when Martial or where Mbappe and Neymar are charging at your back line, which is completely fine for me. So I do think that Solskjaer just knows how to get his team up for a big game, and when there's a lot on the line. And I do think that the incentive of winning the group and securing top spot with 1 game in hand is attractive. So I do think that they will go out, and I'm not sure in what fashion they win, but I think in some games, like Bruno said after the West Brom game, style doesn't matter as long as you get the 3 points. So I do think that in that game it's just important to beat PSG and get those 3 points and have the group wrapped up at the top. So I do think that they'll get another win. But I do think it's going to be a close game again, because obviously they do have their qualities. So I will go for another 2-1.
Just to add to that quickly as well, Arjun, Wan-Bissaka is all kinds of wrong for killing Mbappe. He's just a fullback that he doesn't want to play against, because if you look at Mbappe's game, it's all about having a fullback that he can have on toast, that he can then get around him, whether it's inside, outside, and get balls into box. With Wan-Bissaka, like the game especially that we played this season, he's just always at him. He's nibbling away at him. He's really intense. He's not giving him space on the ball. He's getting that extendable leg out there. He's making these sort of spider leg tackles and these ugly sort of looking tackles. But it's a nightmare for Mbappe. And to be fair, a little bit like we were touching on with, they don't play against it in France. I would hazard a guess, there's no fullback in France currently in the French league does what Wan-Bissaka does defensively. There's probably not a fullback in the world that can tackle as cleanly and as well and as smartly as what Aaron Wan-Bissaka can. So it's just not a good matchup for Mbappe. And I think don't get me wrong, he scored in the game at Old Trafford in the first leg. Obviously, the first time we played them, but we didn't have Aaron then, I don't think. And I just think that he's the sort of fullback that's just the worst nightmare for Mbappe, if there is such a thing.
No, we had Ashley Young then. That was what happened.
That explains a lot then, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It almost sort of answers that, completely irrelevant, but it almost answers that what if thing what if Harry Kane had squared it to Sterling in the World Cup? It would have been Mbappe versus Young, and that would have not been a fun final to watch. So, you're right. I mean, he is fantastic, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and obviously he's just revolutionized the way we've sort of had that right-hand side we had for so long. You know, I think really everyone said it, since Gary Neville, he's been the one that's been the most consistent. Everyone knows he's the starting right back. Maybe for a spell there was Antonio Valencia when he was in good form under Van Gaal and Mourinho, but again, there were still issues surrounding him because he was obviously, you know, a little bit culpable defensively and getting old. So this person, Wan-Bissaka's come in, he's probably going to be United's right back for the next decade, and hopefully he'll just improve and scare people off the pitch, really. Let Sterling change sides, Mbappe change sides. We'll see he's going to play against on, I think we're playing on Wednesday, but we'll see who he plays then. But Joe, your prediction, I mean, do you agree 2-1 seems fair?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, this is PSG. Yeah, 2-1.
Yeah.
I think they'll score. I think you've always got to fancy a team that's got Mbappe and Neymar to get it. You know, everything we've said obviously about having them tied down. They're still the type of player that can score. You know, especially Neymar, he's got the ability to score from a set piece. You know what I mean? Mbappe's just got the capability to beat anybody on his day. You have to fancy them to score. You always do, but. I just think, like I said, I just think United have a way of sort of, when you get past that initial press with PSG, or when you get at that defence, again, that defence, it's not great. And the other thing PSG have struggled with, they haven't had a focal point in attack as well. I think Tuchel said the other week, didn't he? He was probably wrong to get rid of Cavani, which says it all, really. And then, obviously, they let Thiago go quite, in the summer, which everyone thought fair enough. But you look at that defence now, and when Marquinhos doesn't play like that first game, it's lacking. It's lacking experience. Kimpembe's a good centre back, but he's still quite young, so he will make mistakes. And then, obviously, I can't remember the guy they had on Jallo. Yeah, he had a pretty good game apart from giving the penalty away. But again, he's quite inexperienced, and he's not the sort of defender you would expect to see in a PSG team. You just expect PSG to have class all around the field, and it's quite startling when you look at their team, actually. For all the money they've got and all the money they've spent, they haven't got world-class players in not even in half of their positions, I don't think, to be fair. You've got Mbappe, you've got Neymar, and you've probably got Verratti when he's fit and on form. He's a world-class midfielder. Kimpembe's got potential to be world-class, but like I say, he's still quite young, so he'll make mistakes. You said about the fullbacks, the goalkeeper Navas is a good goalkeeper, but he's not a world-class name by any means. So it's really surprising with PSG, but I just think United have whatever Solskjaer does, whatever the tactical system is, it just doesn't suit them. And I just think stick with that, get the job done. It's all about getting the job done next Wednesday, because you don't really want it to go down to Leipzig on the last game. That is going to be a difficult game, going to Germany, and they're a good side. We were lucky to beat them 5-0 first time. We wore them down and we got some late goals. But if they score an early goal against us, they could do the same to us. So we need to try and get this group wrapped up at home, I think, next week.
Absolutely. I think you're right there in saying they've got the way they've spent money, it's been frivolous to say the least. I mean, you think about all the players that have gone through. I mean, Ibrahimovic obviously was a steal for however much he was. Cavani as well, brilliant signing. Neymar and Mbappe, and Di Maria has obviously been fantastic for them, as annoying as it is. But you're shaking your head, Arian. But yeah, I mean, you're right. They were an aging squad, and they haven't been properly replaced. The fullbacks as well. Like I said, the midfield is weak, and it has moments of brilliance, but then again, you can't always compare the French league to the Champions League, and they got ruined really in the final with Bayern Munich, and that's what everyone needs to aspire to, and they haven't really built on that. I don't think. I mean, I'm not sure who they bought in the summer really. So I mean, maybe Florence.
That was a big sign. Don't forget about Moise Kean. I mean, he's done all right for them, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult for them to spend like it has been a lot of big clubs this summer, hasn't it? So, but yeah, I mean, their league will always be their downfall, though, Arjun, because of the league they play in. They're never going to be prepared for the Champions League. It's a little bit like Man City, you know. Yes, the Premier League is a good standard, but the football's very different in Europe to the Premier League. So I think that's one of the reasons why Man City have struggled to get over the line as well, because actually the transition from Premier League to Europe is completely different. I think that's why United have done so well, because there seems to be more space in Europe for them to play, and they have more time on the ball, and that's why United have done actually all right in Europe and struggled in the Premier League, if you know what I mean.
Just to put some context onto what Joe said, I think PSG lost their first 2 games in the league this season, and they're already like 10 points clear at the top.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And they lost recently, I think, to Monaco. Fabregas came on and had a world.
Yeah.
But, they're only 6 points clear now instead of like 9.
Yeah, maybe. But that is it, and it's going to be interesting to see. I think United might make it an interesting one. I think it might be a 2-0 win, because I could just see them sealing it off. I think because obviously Tuanzebe is not going to play, so if we do play a back 5, it will be Lindelof on one side, Maguire on the other, and maybe Eric Bailly will be fit for that, or if not, it's probably going to be Matic. And I think maybe as a centre-back, it would be interesting to see how that works.
They might play McTominay as a centre-back. He's done it for Scotland, hasn't he, in a 3. So they could drop Scott back there. They will want Scott in midfield if he's available, though, because obviously he's done so well at playing in that midfield against PSG. But if you need an emergency centre-back, Scott's capable of playing that role, I think, you know. So.
Yeah, very true. I mean, he played it a few times for both Oli and Jose, so it'll be interesting to see how that setup is without Tuanzebe. He's obviously become more and more influential since coming back from injury. But I'm going to say a 2-0 win for United, and we'll see how things progress after that. But I'm afraid that is all we have time for this week. We've gone on a little bit, but it's not a problem. And it's so important that with these next games that momentum is driven forward and things happen for United, because one slip up and we're back to the drawing board and back to square one, and things can just get worse from there. But sorry, cut off again. That is all we have time for this week. Thank you for listening, and thank you to both Joe and Arian for joining me. It's been a pleasure talking to you as always.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me on. Loved it.
No problem. And of course, United after that point will be playing West Ham away in the first game, which will have fans back in the grounds. Obviously, unfortunately, not United fans, because it is at the Olympic Stadium. But then United will be going away to Leipzig after that. If you have any questions or topics for next week that you would like for us to discuss, comment below on the Twitter poll or during the live feed of the recording. And if you enjoyed this, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on Twitter for all of our content.